I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.
So today's Dharma talk title is Unrelenting Intention. You hear me talk about intention all the time. Today I want to talk about unrelenting intention. And I'm going to, since I thought about it a little bit, which I don't often do, but this time I did, we'll read a little bit about where this comes from. To fulfill the vow to be with all things. This is the Bodhisattva vow. Maybe you've taken that formally. Maybe you relate to it just because you've read about it and think about it, or seems like a good way to work with your mind. Up to you whether you do this formally, informally, or whether you even do it at all. That's up to you. I say don't do anything unless you have to. And you shouldn't be taking a vow unless you have to do that. You should, because the chances of that coming apart are really great if you're doing it out of some kind of materialistic approach. Gaining idea is another word for materialism. To fulfill the vow to be with all things, no matter what occurs, no matter how it feels, no matter how silly, how crazy, how angry, no matter what. Return. Be with all things, be with all things. No more arguments. If you're arguing with yourself, if you're doing any kind of either or in your mind, I mean, you might as well just go jump on a tilt-a-whirl or get on spend the rest of your life on a merry-go-round. Because mentally, that is what you're doing. Am I accusing you of something? Yeah, a little bit of an accusation. All I'm asking you to do is hold still. Body and mind are not two different things. You can't get the mind to hold still, although there are techniques for working with that. My idea, having done a few of these techniques, is to hold still and watch the movement of the mind so that you can see that your mind is actually spinning. This is not the truth. This is a pack of lies that are going around looking for someone to believe in those lies. Don't agree, don't disagree, don't ignore. Those are the three poisons. Awareness. Just observe. Just be aware. Receive. I've written all this down, like I would forget it. It's like a picture without a frame. So you can hardly even call it a picture. What do they call that? The big picture? There's no frame on it. It's endless, but it's only endless relatively. Ultimately, there isn't anything. There is no distance between here and that or there. If you think there is, you will not only suffer, but you will torture those around you and those that are close to you that are depending on you, or maybe just to be their friend, or maybe just to listen to them a little bit when they complain about their life, rather than give them some dumb advice. You might want to just listen. This doesn't mean when you're listening to someone and you hear what they're going through or how they're doing, you are quite clear about what they're dealing with, and what may come up in you is advice. You know, you might want to break up with her, or you might want to recommit yourself to that, or you might want to. Don't give any advice to anybody. As I've said probably hundreds of times by now, make them drag it out of you. If they really want your feedback, then they should really make sure that you know that they really want this. Because why have a conversation about this stuff? It's just more circles. The boundary of lies will continue to taunt you and try to seduce you into separating yourself and going to war with the illusion of the other, capital O, other. There is no other. Everywhere you look, you don't see anything but yourself. If you think, believe, feel, judge, conclude otherwise, then take a look around you and notice that you're on a merry-go-round. You're going in circles. And I can tell you right now, what you could look for is notice how your emotions go up and down, how you feel really good one day, feel really bad the next day, feel really good the next day. And you'll look for reasons why you feel that way, including what kind of cereal you had. Anything to get a reference point out of it, anything to blame somebody, credit somebody for how you feel. There isn't anyone. Don't believe me. Don't believe it. You find out. If this is here next week, you might want to listen to me some more. If this is gone next week, please just get yourself to some place where I would say face the wall, or someplace where you're completely still and you watch the circularity of the mind. This is all you have to do. You don't have to believe in Buddhism. You don't have to receive precepts. You don't have to save all beings. The closest you can come to that is to be with all things. That means anything that arises in your mind should be there. It has a right to be there. It doesn't have a right like somebody has a right. It means that it's dependently arisen. What happens is not disobeying anything. What happens is not obeying anything. There isn't anything. It is empty of that. If you see it, the work is done. If you see it, it's as if relatively, it's as if you just flop. Yeah, I think Trungpa Rinpoche even uses that kind of old dog flop kind of thing. When you understand there isn't anything else to do because there is no else. Just return to awareness of everything, not necessarily what you think about everything. Okay. I'm on my own now. I'm not going to read any more notes. So, but I'm saying intentionally and relentlessly. Why I use the word relentless is because sometimes we just don't want to do this. We want to continue to just hate and scold and point at this or self-deprecation. That's it. For me, I can't get this right. Here I go again. So relentlessly resolve yourself to whatever shows up. Don't agree with it. I'm not saying agree with this. Don't disagree with it. I'm not saying take any position and don't ignore it. Just receive it. If you receive it, initially it's going to feel probably very uncomfortable, and you can use the first noble truth of the Buddha, life is suffering, to help you get through whatever early stages those show up as in your life, in your footsteps on the path. Eventually there's no footsteps, there's no feet, there's no path, there's just this. There's nowhere you've been and there's nowhere to go. And what's the third one? There isn't anyone. This is an illusion. This is an illusion. You need to see that. Am I mad? Not really. I just know that you listen to me if I make a fool of myself, scream and yell and pound something. Maybe I should break something. I have students that are so determined to hang on to a self that even if I get mad at them or threaten them or insult them or do anything with them, they still want to be somebody. And they would rather blame me for how they feel. I don't have many of them. I don't have many students. That hurt.
Do you need an ice pack?
Yeah, I need an ice pack right here. Did you have a question?
Kabali, there was something that said a boundary of lies. What is a boundary of lies, the way it's talking about?
It looks like things are different. It looks like there's a differentiation. There are no boundaries. It's like there's a picture with no frame. So is it even a picture? Or the conventional way of describing that is a big picture. Is there a big picture? Is there even a picture? Find this out. Find it out yourself. Don't believe anything I say. If you get some kind of support from this person or from the teachings or from some other area. Some people experiment around with psychedelics or drugs that change. Maybe you can get some help there. I'm not against that. I'm not for anything. Maybe you should talk to aliens. I don't know. But I do know that the most important thing I can say to you is train your mind. And how do you do that? You just watch the mind. You just look at it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to cover it up. You don't have to ignore it. Yes, sir.
Bowing. To see the boundary of lies, do we need to change or fix anything?
No. You may have to pass up doing this so that you can meditate. Sit down, hold still, watch what continues to shuffle along. Because what shuffles along is the illusion. It just seems very convincing, especially if it is flavored with, colored with, or decorated with emotions. I like it, I don't like it, this is pretty good, this really sucks. This is terrible. I don't even want to live anymore. This is so horrible. Pride. We're full of ourselves. How do I know about it? I'm full of myself. I wouldn't know this otherwise. And you don't have to get rid of it. You just have to see that it's not true, that there is no self. So what does the pride do? It looks for somebody. You don't have to change how you feel or be somebody else. You get to be exactly who you are. Good luck with that. It's your karma. Live your karma. Don't miss your life by being better or different, or you just go. I don't care if you're a really, really kind, loving person and never hurt anybody. You're still going around in a circle. It's just that you'll have to come back and run right smack dab. That's the Sanskrit for run into it. Right smack dab into the karma that you had ignored in the last lifetime. Is this true? I don't know. Doesn't matter if it's true. I don't need evidence. If you see there's no past and no future, all the evidence you need is right in front of you, looking at you right in the face. In everyone's face, in every wall, every tree, every muskrat, every squirrel, every duck. If you happen to find any ducks. Looking right at you. And then what is it saying? Not separate, not separate, not separate, not separate, not separate, not something else, not something else. Yes, sir.
What's the distinction between unrelenting and maintenance?
Maintenance is holding on to it. And if you hold on to anything, then it takes the form of confusion or delusion because it feels like you're getting somewhere. And unrelenting means you return to it because the awareness will show that you go towards it and it starts to come apart. Ego makes a big deal out of that and says, I'm not getting anywhere. This isn't working. I need another kind of practice. Whereas wisdom doesn't do anything. It just sees that what is breaking apart is an illusion. So it's the returning to it. Return to the cushion. Return to the cushion. Don't maintain it. This doesn't mean you don't have a schedule where you sit every morning at 7 o'clock. But that's not a maintenance. That's just a form. And what are you doing? You're returning to the form. I've never given anybody instruction to sit down and never give up. Well, maybe once or twice. But that's certain people need that kind of instruction because they're so cocky. More? Good question. Maintenance, don't maintain, just return. And that every time you return, it's slightly different each time. There's never any kind of pitching post there where you can get that kind of reassurance that what you're doing is right. The feeling that is up in the air all the time is a path. That's how this feels. You can do it. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure how to ask the question, but it seems like it's really subtle between returning and maintenance. Like that returning every day at 7 can feel like maintenance.
Nah, it's not. That's why you have a teacher. So they can say something like, nah, it's not. Ask it again. I'll tell you. Maintenance, go ahead. Nah, it's not. No, it's just returning. You just find yourself back there again, sitting 7 o'clock, sit down, hold still, watch the mind, watch the movement of the mind. And one day might feel pretty good. The next day it might feel, just all I did was daydream the whole time, or all I did was fall asleep. Awareness. It's about returning. And then each time you return, You're returning to some different aspect of the confusion that looks like it is real. Any other questions out here while we're doing that? No? Yes, no? Otherwise, yes.
Yoka Bowing, I have a question on YouTube from Adriana.
All right.
Adriana Bowing, how can I refrain from possessiveness over happy experiences or beings I love?
Um, I'm not sure if I'm following, but how can you return from happiness? No?
Possessiveness. Refrain from.
Refrain from, okay.
Possessiveness.
Possessiveness. Just observe it. You don't have to refrain. Don't worry about refraining. Just be aware that you're doing that. And then the awareness itself might allow the causes and conditions could arise as backing away from that in some way, or it getting stronger. But finally, after all these years, you're finally just going to watch what happens and stop making demands on everything or requirements. How can I remain? How can I get better? How can I improve? This is spiritual materialism. My teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, talked about this many years ago, using spiritual techniques or meditation to get somewhere, to advance, to be more clear, to be more whatever. Further questions? Any questions on Zoom? Yes.
Sokuzan, is pride itself a form of maintenance?
Yes, it's solidifying something. So it's a maintenance there of your identity. That's kind of to me, that's the final gate. Anybody I know that's been practicing for 15, 20 years or longer, sometimes longer than I have, if they're awake, it's obvious they're awake to me. And if they're asleep, usually the thing that's stopping them is pride. They've gone through every other gate. They've gone through all kinds of practice situations, and they're still stuck in themselves. Yes.
Sokuzan, how is your pride not maintenance?
My pride? Are you calling me full of pride?
You just referred to it earlier.
Oh, okay. That pride. Okay. How is it not maintenance? Because it's not. Because it only comes up situationally. Like all the other illusions, it comes up situationally, but there's no solid. The consciousness that is there is just observing that pride. It's not fighting with it or validating it. If I come after you, you will defend yourself, won't you? That's pride. And yet you're a student of mine. You're a fully ordained monk, and I can't attack you. I have to be very careful because you might leave the sangha and take off your robes and throw them at me. So that might hurt your feelings. More?
Sokuzan, so what is the activity of the solidity in the student with pride?
It's just feeling like you are somebody that's whatever. You'll find some kind of opposition, somebody that's attacking you. That's why the best way to, maybe not the best, but a way to see your pride is to have a teacher who turns up in front of you as a mirror and shows you your pride. But you may not be able to handle that. And if you can't, when I say handle it, receive it. It may not look like a teaching. It may look like an accusation or your teacher's being unfair with you. More. Good question. Good area to ask questions in. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, how does the student receive when the very poking by the teacher invokes that kind of defensiveness?
Just look at the defensiveness. Don't add on. Don't validate, justify, and go to a story. Just notice the defensiveness. Rather than go on and say, well, I have a right to be defensive because look what he just did. And then tell stories and make demands on the teacher. Maybe just in your own mind. What are they doing like this? Look at all I've done for that damn teacher. I've had this happen. Look at all I've done for you. Never like Thank you for the teaching. Thank you. Drop to the feet of the teacher. Maybe not literally, but if you meet a teacher, if you meet the Buddha in another person, I'm not here to collect a credential from you. I don't care what you do. Some of you know that because you'll come and try to push and see how much I care about hanging on to you. You're all free to go. I may feel sad that you're going because I may see that if you stick with this and stay with this and return to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, there's a possibility in this lifetime before this chemical structure that is unreal falls apart and the consciousness no longer has a body. Find out who you are before this comes apart, because if you still think you're a human form, you're somebody when this comes apart, then that consciousness is going to look for another body, and they're everywhere. There are embryos everywhere, and you'll just bump into one, and that won't work. Wrong. Mars has to be in something. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about astrology. I'm talking about the causes and conditions that are impossible to search out for an individual, for an ego, but for consciousness always finds its own form. This is the first tenet of the order of immediate light. Why do I say that? Because I'm looking at it. Anything that happens here or there is just consciousness finding its own form. To you, it might look like pouring coffee or mopping the kitchen floor. To me, it looks like the Buddha everywhere. That's how I speak. I couldn't sit up here and hold forth like this and relatively make a fool of myself unless I was looking at the truth all the time. I don't have to be different. I don't have to be a person who doesn't get mad, or a person who's always kind and peaceful, like some teachers in the world are just absolute sweethearts. If you need a teacher like that, don't come this way. More?
Showing that frustration that's been coming up of wanting to just hand in my robes and go live in the mountains. How do I?
That's pride. You want to go in the mountains and be where the real Dharma is. That's a Pratyeka Buddha, self-styled Buddha, wanting to be the Buddha for yourself and separate yourself from everybody, including the teacher. Go ahead.
Shobhan, how do I enter that Dharma gate?
Return to the wall. Return to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, over and over and over again. Don't maintain, just return. It's so extremely simple, and it's so extremely hard to do. It's extremely hard because all of your karma is stacked up behind you like a luggage. And so every time you sit down, all of that is clamoring to be reviewed, and you can even say approved, although you don't have to approve it. Just look at it. The 15th century is clamoring for your attention. Don't believe anything I say. You find out yourself. More?
Shobhan, when we talk about pride, that word suggests something that's so simple and yet it's so complicated and difficult to see, where
It is.
that activity of wanting to go into the mountains doesn't look like what I understand as pride.
Mm-hmm.
What is being triggered other than the feeling of being puffed up?
Well, just being puffed up. You want to protect that part. And so going into the mountains, going into the mountaintop, I'm not saying that couldn't be valuable. Going into retreat is something I recommend. We have several people in our Sangha who are monks who are in solitary retreat right now, otherwise they wouldn't be here. The rest of them are on vacation somewhere. A few of them. Which should they be? Of course they should. People should do what they need to do. I'm not here to have you check in with me on everything. But I would recommend that if you go into retreat, that you do that in a way that just concentrates on a sitting practice of meditation, which means you could leave this room and go upstairs and sit there for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's possible to separate yourself so you can just train the mind, not go to a mountaintop and give up your robes and all that baloney. Yes.
Shobhan, I guess it seems like the leading edge of that feels more like disappointment and exhaustion. doesn't show up as being puffed up. So what am I missing or not clear about?
It's just the reverse kind of pride, the reverse kind of arrogance. Can't remember the name for that. You remember what that is? We talked about that. It's like there's the kind of pride that's pretty obvious. And then there's the self-effacing kind of pride where I'm just a humble person and I don't know why my teacher's being so mean to me because I know I'm not full of myself. If you think you're not full of yourself, this is the very nature of ego, is to take a position on anything, including enlightenment. Don't take a position. Just observe, and you'll notice that the illusion itself continues to take positions, run away from this, run towards that, have this kind of explanation about why she, they did this or did that, constant stories about everything. You got a lot of questions. Was that the last one? Oh, good. Yes.
Be unbowing. What is the last Dharma gate you entered?
This one.
What is this one?
It's just this. There's no movement in it. Nothing happens. It's always this right now. For you, you're going somewhere. This isn't going anywhere. If this collapses and dies right now of heart failure, which could easily happen, nothing has actually occurred to this. But it may have occurred to you observing that happen because you are still tightened down on your identity over there and this identity over here. Keep coming.
Be unbowing. You said I'm going somewhere. How?
You are?
You said I'm going somewhere and you're not.
So I said, I'm going somewhere and you're not. Is that what I said?
Basically.
No. You just got that backwards. Are you deluded by the things that are seeming so clear?
Probably deluded by everything.
Okay, maybe. You have a question. I don't mean to taunt you.
Be unbowing. When you said this is your Dharma gate, just this. I get the image that you live in a Dharma gate. Do you live in a Dharma gate? Is that where you reside?
I couldn't teach if I didn't. If I had somehow escaped and I was somehow superior or somehow up here in the Dharmakaya and speaking to you poor helpless sufferers. No, I am what you're working with. Same thing. Not separate. It's not separate. Nothing is separate from anything else. Just it looks like it intensely, and that is so powerful that we will fight with each other. We'll hurt people we care about. We'll hurt ourselves and struggle and fight. It's all over the world. We do it in our families. We do it in our sangha. It's very, very uncomfortable and painful. Thinking we're right, someone else is wrong. More?
No.
Yes, sir.
Brian Bowen. So maybe it's been 2 years since I asked to sow the rakusu. And I recall around that time and probably before that and since that I coveted being able to wear a rakusu and maybe someday robes, and then maybe someday robes, and the little pins that showed up on some people's robes and rakusus at some point. How can I work with that kind of pride?
Don't do anything unless you have to. don't ask for precepts, or you already asked, and just don't do it. Don't ask for precepts. Or do something else with your life. No requirement. The only thing I would say, I would reinforce to you or anyone here is find out who you are. If you need to do it through Buddhism, it's possible to do that. Maybe another way to do it, I don't know. But find out, don't go any further in your life without finding some way to inspect or look at or be aware of the illusion that is confusing all of us. Confusing, the whole world is just incredibly confused and crazy, ripping ourselves apart. We probably are so ignorant and so stupid, to use the intense word, that we're probably going to destroy this planet just because we're not being responsible. It's like we're just not being responsible. The whole world's coming apart. The old drill baby drill idea seems to be gaining a lot of agreement. So less is better. Don't do anything. You're here. Continue to do this. Continue to. My understanding is you're continuing to meditate. At least what little you're in touch with me. You're in touch with me some. Just continue to do that. You don't have to add on. You don't have to do more. I have people who have asked for Jukai years ago, and nothing ever happened. Some people sew the whole Roxu and then decide they don't want to do it. I have, how many blank Roxus do I have? A few. A couple. Is that wrong? No, it's not. There's nothing to correct. There's nothing wrong with that. People do the best they can. It's an incredible illusion that we're dealing with, and each person is dealing with that in different ways. Some people would just work with that in different ways, and I watch people do that. I don't tell people what to do, other than if they come and give me permission by asking me what to do. Then I might feel like, then I can say, maybe you should go into a 10-day solitary retreat. That's always fun. Not for me. It's not fun for me. That's why I'm not doing it. Follow me a little bit. You're doing exactly what you need to do. Unless something else comes up, it takes you a different direction. Maybe there's something else you need to be doing. But the very best thing you can do is listen to the Dharma being taught. If this person is still your teacher, or if you're still considering that, I'm not sure where that is at. That seems to change with you somewhat. I have no problem with that. Don't make up your mind about anything. Relate to whatever shows up. Whatever shows up in your mind is going to be quite a bit different than what is showing up in someone who's been practicing this for 20 years. More?
Brian Bowing. I've become, or have been, suspicious of the different directions that my mind takes me.
Okay.
Is there anything I can do with that?
I think that's pretty good. You come to a conclusion about watching the mind come and go. So a little bit of suspicion comes up when you see that you can feel this way 1 minute, and then this way the next minute, and then this way the next minute. That's called awareness. The important thing, if you can, don't conclude, including the suspicion. But then you can watch the suspicion and don't conclude about the suspicion. So it's like sometimes it's taught, and I sometimes say it this way myself, just back up a quarter of an inch and watch the movement. Get a little bit of, it's almost artificial objectivity on things, so you can stop condemning yourself for the things you're wrong about and congratulating yourself for the things you're right about. There is no such thing as right and wrong. That's a fabrication that perpetuates the illusion of otherness, perpetuates the illusion of the intense one is life and death. There is no life, there's no death. You need to see it. Otherwise, you can't say what I just said. There's no death. I'm not saying this body doesn't die, but who you actually are, your actual identity cannot die. Don't believe that. Don't say, Sokuzan said that. Maybe that's true. Don't do that. Doubt everything. You find out. Further questions?
Ondo bowing. In responding to Shoka, I think you brought up the entitlement. How does entitlement
Entitlement.
show up in pride?
I don't know if I use that word, but that would be one that you just think you deserve something, you have something coming, and you're not getting it, so therefore you feel like the pride would show up. But I thought, no, I need that. I need to be respected. I need to have this, or people need to see what I'm doing and how. So it's just, we're full of ourselves. It's just a way of fueling that part of the consciousness that is tied up in knots over right and wrong, should be and shouldn't be, and may have been doing this for centuries in different life forms. Here we are again. If you're sitting in this room, you're ready to hear this, whether you're ready to understand it deeply enough to be able to train your mind to see yourself. You have to do this yourself. The Buddha can't help you. I can't help you. The only thing I can do is say, it was pointed out for me, and I practiced, and now I teach out of what I'm looking at, not out of what I have become or turned into. The same thing. Still just an old man sitting here.
Ondo bowing, are we entitled to anything?
No, there isn't anyone. In order to be entitled, there has to be an identity over here who is not getting something or deserves something. So society teaches differently. It teaches respect and all of that. And not that we shouldn't be respectful, but just to say that we deserve it. Something that's just, it's not that it doesn't have a relative ring to it that sounds pretty good based on our insane society we're in, of course. People that have been born in a very, very difficult area and end up being criminals when they're children, because they don't have whatever. Who knows what the causes and conditions are? They end up in prison, and we punish these people rather than help them. So the whole society is completely confused because it is running on relative truth. Right and wrong, angels and devils, on and on, instead of saying that this is just consciousness that is confused. Yes.
Ondo bowing, so then what role does respect have in the Sangha? For example, should we be respecting each other? Or are we entitled to respect from members?
I would use the entitled word. I would say we should, in our practice, we should endeavor to respect each other and the confusion that everyone's working with. You may not be working with jealousy so much, or you may. But somebody else may be working with intense jealousy. And someone else you may not have explosive anger or irritation at everything, but somebody else may have that and may have very great difficulty. We just look around at any of the people that we know in our Sangha, we can see how much difference, what different kinds of passion, aggression, and ignorance that each person is dealing with. So we need to be respectful of that. If we're not respectful of someone's confusion, I would say to myself as a teacher, if I'm not respectful of anyone's confusion that I talk to as a student, I'm not going to be able to help them. If I'm just trying to be like a parent and correct them or make them act differently, not the way this teacher functions. I do it with that person, and that may be sitting in the hell realm with them every time I see them, every time I meet them. More.
Going back to entitlement, it seems like that is closely related to resentment. If we don't get what we feel we deserve, we become resentful.
Which is pride. Self-centeredness. There's somebody didn't get what they deserve, or somebody, I should have gotten that and I'm not getting it. Or I own that and somebody else has now got it. Or I should have gotten that and they got it. And is there relatively, there's all kinds of proof around that. It's everywhere. But ultimately, there are no separate beings. This is an illusion. If you begin to see that, even though you're still in a limited form of a human form with blood flow and passion, aggression, and ignorance still operating in that consciousness, So what will be different? The consciousness has actually seen or perceived that there is no solid identity there. That's just a part of dependent origination, part tantra. And anything you add on is the imaginary nature, the parinishvana, or having ideas and evaluations, judgments, and so on.
Well, Divine, to continue kind of trying to break down pride, how is that lack or that sense of entitlement related to a lack of empathy? I mean, would we have empathy for fellow Sangha members and still feel like we are entitled to respect or respect our way?
It's getting pretty complicated in that area. I mean, you could, it gets very conversational when we do that. I would have to agree to some extent with you, the way you're saying it, but the fundamental understanding needs to come from a direct perception that there's no one here pointing to you, and there's no one there pointing to me. No, that's the primary mistaken identity or misunderstanding. But it's so in our face. I'm here. I'm going to later on go there, or I'm old and having difficulty with my health, and you're young and you're doing fine, and you can walk around. You can go out and walk 5 miles and no problem at all. So big contrast everywhere. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are overweight, some people are very thin. All the contrast. Some people's intelligence level is very, very sharp and bright, and they can see and grasp concepts and ideas very, very well. Other people can't quite get close to that. So the differentiation is so powerful, but the desire just floats up through all of that and pushes and pulls. And the passion, aggression, ignorance, all of that is just spread all over through that situation and operates out of hope for something better and fear of something worse. Keeping what you've got and not losing it, and getting back what you lost. Those kinds of thoughts and emotions. More? Go ahead.
On Divine, if you're saying pride is our final gate, it's kind of like, how do we go down farther into pride? How do we see pride?
It's the causes and conditions that support that kind of misunderstanding are intense and powerful. And my understanding of it is to just persist, just be relentless about seeing the truth, be relentless about intending to see what this is yourself. See, and if it means seeing, it means you're not producing ideas about it. It means you're receiving everything. You're receiving the best place to receive it in this tradition is from the teacher, if you can. But you might not be able to do that. You might feel the teacher's being unfair with you, like I certainly felt with both of my teachers. Felt like they were being unfair. Therefore, it took me a lot longer to see what they were pointing at. Well,
Brian Bond, how is suspicion a conclusion?
so it's if one is locking down on it and using the suspicion to develop other stories that validate why you're suspicious of something, have little side stories, little balloons, thought balloons around it. So they provide little conclusions here and there that stops you from investigating further. If you hear a noise down the hallway, there's a suspicion there's something down there. You can sit back around the corner and speculate on it for the rest of the day, or you can walk down the damn hallway. That's all I'm saying. Want to walk down the hallway? That's the hallway. This is your mind. Look at something. Visual consciousness is very, very strong and reinforces the primary illusion, which is that there's something else. Sound doesn't do that quite as much. Thinking does that a little bit. Touch does it a little bit. Taste does it a little bit, but that's pretty intimate. But sight looks like everything's over there and you can get away from it. So sit down, hold still, have the eyes open. Don't close your eyes during meditation. If you do, close your eyes during meditation. It's not wrong. Just open them. This is not like I'm doing something wrong. No, you closed your eyes. Now you're opening your eyes. Spend a lot of time in front of the wall, in front of the floor. If you know this is too claustrophobic, back away, or just look down at the floor. As long as you're looking at something that's not moving, then you can see more clearly what is moving in the mind stream. Close your eyes, and then you start to get mesmerized or hypnotized by what moves in the mind stream. And consciousness becomes wrapped up in the thought patterns and the emotions, the ideas, the conclusions. Whereas if the eyes are open, less likelihood of that coming about, and more likelihood you'll just get bored, which is the nature of space when ego is present. Boredom. Take a question, especially from someone on Zoom. Hasn't asked a question.
David Bowing.
David, go ahead.
As Buddhist practitioners, is what we're returning to a point of reference? Bowing.
Yes, you need a point of reference if you're going to practice the Buddha's Dharma, as I understand it. I'm not saying it couldn't be taught 1,500 different ways, but as I understand it, you're going to need some reference points. One of them is the teacher or the Buddha. The other one is what is being taught, the Dharma. Nothing comes from its own side as an individual self. Everything is in a state of dissatisfaction or suffering. And there's more of them after that. And then the community, people like we get together, we're all here together, we ask questions. In this situation, ask questions of the teacher, and we listen to the teacher's response to certain people. And that may be helpful to us. It may be such that you just don't want to do this anymore. There's nothing that's incorrect. If you listen to what I'm saying and you're not interested in this anymore, please leave. I don't want you to leave. I think you should stay here. My opinion is you should stay and listen to what I have to say, because I'm looking at something that might be very helpful to you when you approach your death, not to mention after your death. But if you don't feel that way, maybe you could say your karma is not ready to hear this. Maybe you need to go join some other group or find some other teacher who's nicer or makes more sense, because I certainly don't make sense. And I'm not interested in making sense.
David Bowing.
Naveed, go ahead.
So returning is still the path.
Yes. Yes. Return to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, and then watch yourself drift away off into the, eating caramel apples or whatever, or arguing with your mother, father, spouse, or disagreeing with what's happening on the news, going any different direction, or trying to, or taking your clothes back that you purchased because they're the wrong size. Anything you're doing is that's the otherness of the illusion. And it's strong. It just feels like you're somebody doing something. But then when you come back, sit down and hold still and just return to refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the Dharma, refuge in the Sangha, refuge in the teacher, if you need to say that also, and do that, and possibly bow or prostrate. Do something with your body, because the body mind are not two different things. They just look like it. This is very, very irritating to ego. Ego does not want to do that because of pride. Ego doesn't want to prostrate to somebody. I'm not prostrating to anybody. I'm my own man. That kind of crap. It's everywhere. It's just disgusting. It's disgusting. It is. And these days, it's all over the news, all over the world. And all I'm saying is, I'm not saying ignore all that stuff and just go to a mountaintop. I'm saying the other way around. I'm saying listen to everything. Stay in touch with everything. Stay in touch with the news. Stay in touch with everything. Listen, receive. And if you can, don't come to conclusions about anything unless you do, and then just observe the conclusion. But get your butt to the cushion so that you sit down and spend some time holding still and watching the movement of the mind, so you eventually find out who you are. You don't get your identity from me, from Buddhism, from any place but your consciousness. Get it from your consciousness so you know what to do. Absolute unconditional confidence about what this is. Even if your death looms over the horizon 3 weeks from now or 3 years from now, you'll know what this is. You'll know that there's no way who you are can be destroyed, who you actually are. But who you think you are is in for it, because that's conditional, and that's life and death. That's the blood pumping situation, the food eating, this is unreal. It's an incredibly powerful illusion. Thank you so much.
I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.